Okay, it's time to get in depth on the Andrew Ramsden. The race has been run since 1964, formerly under the name the Duke of Norfolk Stakes, when it was actually a 2-mile race. Andrew Ramsden was a VRC committee man and chairman who had a love for stayers and actually was an owner of 2 Melbourne Cup winners, one being Gurner's Lane, who broke all our hearts, and Kingston Towns back in 1982, and he also had ownership in Brew. That was a 2000 winner. The race has really come into prominence though since 2019, when it became a Melbourne Cup Qualifier. That same year, the race distance was reduced from 3,200 metres to 2,800 metres. Usually I look back at previous winners and the races they came through on their way to victory. This time I want to look at what each winner since 2019 did afterwards, and specifically in the Melbourne Cup, the race they gained entry into. Steel Prince ran 9th in the 2019 Melbourne Cup after winning the Andrew Ramsden in that year. He had 3 lead-up runs with a planned run in the Herbert Power aborted after a mishap in the barriers prior to start, so his campaign leading into the 2019 Melbourne Cup was somewhat flawed. Ocean X in 2020, she ran 11th in the Melbourne Cup, carrying just 51.5 kilos. She had 4 races in her lead-up. Her team seemed preoccupied with ensuring she didn't win a lead-up race so as to avoid a penalty. But in the end, she went into the Cup under an injury cloud and performed like a lame duck. Realm of Flowers, she was by far the most impressive winner, with a margin close to 5 lengths. Unfortunately, she was injured and couldn't run in the Melbourne Cup of 2021. The 2022 winner, Point Nepean, was probably the winner in the weakest field of the 4 that we're looking at. And unfortunately, he never contested the Melbourne Cup either, after his form was well below par during the spring, and he'd finished 6 lengths 14th in the Herbert Power, so they pulled the pin on Point Nepean. Okay, let's go into 2023 Andrew Ramsden. Number 1 is Vow and Declare. Well, the old fella's last start was one of the strongest Mornington Cup fields you've seen, and to be honest, it was a bit troubling a watch if you're a fan of Vow and Declare. He finished 7 lengths behind the winner and the second place getter Hezashocka, who is one of his opponents in the Andrew Ramsden. Yes, we should mention he carried 60 kilograms and Hezashocka only 58 in that race. And yes, we can mention it was a fast tempo and Vow and Declare was there on pace. Even with that said though, it's hard to bridge that 7 lengths. Prior to the Mornington Cup, Vow and Declare was going as good as ever with a 1 length 4th in the Weight for Age Tancred Stakes. Look, he's had a pretty light prep, and that run may have got him cherry ripe in the Mornington Cup I'm talking about. He's got an awkward barrier for a horse that races forward, but it's at least 500 metres before the first turn. Could still get into that preferred position on pace. Number 2 is Celino. If we can take his Sydney Cup run on its merits, he's got to be a chance of a place. He was one of only 2 horses making ground on the front runners in the Sydney Cup. The other horse was the winner, Explosive Jack. What puts his run into perspective is the fact he only carried 53 kilograms though. Now he's carrying 5.5 kilos more. Some insight into his ability at weight for age was given in the Tancred Stakes. He's run before the Sydney Cup. In that race, he was 16 lengths 8th. So on that, I'll pass. Number 3 is Hezashocka, another OTI runner in those blue and yellow hoops with white sleeves. Now, I don't know exactly how the caps are going to be sorted out, who's going to be wearing a red cap, a blue cap, and a gold cap out of all of those OTI runners. Just check your guides on race day. Hezashocka though, last start he beat home a lot of today's opposition whilst carrying 58 kilograms. Prior to that, he was a very respectable 4th on a soft 7 in the 2,000 metre Queen Elizabeth Stakes. In the Australian Cup, he was 5th with 59 kilograms, very unlucky. He certainly has the quality, but is he really up for the 2,800 metres? Back in 2021, early in his 4-year-old season, he was tried over 2,600 metres in the Victorian version of the Queen Elizabeth, and he finished 6th of 6. He did race on pace that day, and now we're 18 months down the track. He's a leading contender though. Number 4 is Southern France. Nice to see the 8-year-old back on the track and in some new silks. His last start was an eye-catching 11th in the Group 3 JRA Plate a month ago. He'd had 3 trials leading up to his first run. Not even Ma and Eustace could get this guy back to his best after plenty of trying. It's actually 3.5 years since his last win in the 2019 Sandown Classic. Now he's in the hands of a new trainer, Matthew Smith, who did do a miracle with True Marvel in the Sydney Cup. Yeah, so anyway, Southern France's last win, it's more than 3.5 years ago, and you'll be asking for a miracle if you bet this fella. Number 5 is True Marvel with Barrier 4. An astonishing result for True Marvel in the Sydney Cup. He started the race at 150 to 1 and finished second within a length of the winner, Explosive Jack. On that day, he carried 50 kilograms. Today, he's up in weight to the 58.5. On that fact alone, he can't win, and he's not on a soft 7. And it's highly unlikely that 3 of the favourites walk off the track lame, like was the case in the Sydney Cup. His run prior was a gritty 10th in the Adelaide Cup, where he covered a lot of extra ground but still managed to be within 3.7 lengths of the winner, Rebel Racer. I'd be throwing him into the Jericho Cup, not the Melbourne Cup. Number 6 is Aurora's Symphony. Last start ran in the first of the Melbourne Cup qualifiers, the Roy Higgins. There he was disappointing after a stubborn second in the Adelaide Cup. That good result in the Adelaide Cup came after racing a bit closer to the pace. He himself doesn't possess a great turn of foot, but can grind away and will benefit from a strong tempo. He'll carry more than he did in the Adelaide Cup, and he's not going to win. He may finish in the first half of the field though. Number 7 is Amade. Well, here he is again, a horse that caught our eyes in his first couple of Aussie runs back in 2021. But since then, he's done zilch. He didn't run in 2022, and so far in this prep, his highlight has been a 3rd in the 2-mile Adelaide Cup, carrying 57 kilograms. In the Sydney Cup, he finished well back, though it was a soft 7 track. In the Andrew Ramsden, he meets a lot of better horses on level terms weight-wise, so can't win. Number 8 is Swords Drawn. This 7-year-old gelding has been racing since November with a 5-week freshen up in February. In Feb, he won over 2,500 metres at listed level, knocking off the likes of Nerve Not Verve and True Marvel. His recent runs in the Mornington Cup and the Warrnambool Cup haven't been disgraceful, particularly the Warrnambool Cup where he was 3rd on a heavy track. 3 starts back, he was 3rd in the Roy Higgins, carrying 57 kilograms and finishing 3.5 lengths behind Goldman and Solcombe. He could jag a minor placing. Number 9, Rebel Racer. Fresh from a career highlight, winning the Adelaide Cup after setting the pace, he tried the same about 5 weeks later in the Mornington Cup, but ended up being trounced. He definitely had to work a little harder to get to the lead in the Mornington Cup, partly due to his barrier. Unfortunately, he has another wide barrier in the Andrew Ramsden, so he'll spend a lot of fuel getting to the lead or getting thereabouts. And I don't expect him to be there when the whips are cracking.
A clip that has been going around. I'm sure most of you guys have seen this already. We posted this up on our Telegram channel a few days ago. And this video is from the San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus that has since been privated by the creator, by the way, where they promise that they will convert your children. Take a look at this clip.
But you're just frightened. You think that we'll corrupt your kids if our agenda goes unchecked. Funny, just this once, you're correct. We'll convert your children. Happens bit by bit, quietly and subtly, and you will barely notice it.
And many Americans are barely noticing it. Many parents, in fact, most parents don't pay attention to what their kids watch ever. A lot of parents don't pay attention to what their kids are learning in school. And so it is barely.
White Marlin is number 10. This 5-year-old gelding was favourite for the Melbourne Cup after an impressive win in a benchmark 96 over 2,800 metres at Flemington in November last year. Since then, he continued to win and was 6 wins from 6 starts, 4 of them here in Australia at distances ranging from 1,800 to 2,800. It was all going swimmingly for White Marlin until his last start, where he finished second as a 5-1 on favourite. In his favour, though, he was carrying 60 kilograms, and the race was not on the date he was originally set to run. And if you check the video of that recent loss, you should note that he and the eventual winner did clear away from the pack by a significant margin. So it's not the worst defeat, despite the fact he was just $1.22. Remember, he has beaten a lot of Andrew Ramsden opponents that he's facing. Number 11 is Hezashocka, a lightly raced 7-year-old that won 4 races in a row back in his 4-year-old season as he rose through the grades in South Australia. Injury struck though, and since then his best moment would have to be a 3rd in the 2021 Geelong Cup before another serious injury, which kept him off the track for more than a year. His last start though may also be considered his career highlight when he won the listed Port Adelaide Cup. In the past, we've had a Port Adelaide Cup winner take out the Andrew Ramsden. That was Ocean X. She carried 58.5 in the Port Adelaide Cup and dropped to 56 for the Andrew Ramsden. Hezashocka carried 57 in the Port Adelaide Cup, and in the Ramsden at set weights he goes up to 58.5. So that's enough evidence for me to stay away from Hezashocka as a winner. Number 12 is Cadre du Noir. This is a big step up for the US-bred gelding. He did some good things in his spring prep, running second in the listed Colin Stephen and also winning the City Tats Cup over 1.5 miles on a heavy track at Randwick. He actually beat the likes of Arapaho and Realm of Flowers that day. This prep hasn't been so promising. His last start he was 9th on a heavy track at Group 3 level, over 2,000 metres. Before that he was 5.8 lengths 9th in the Group 3 Neville Selwood. On the bright side, coming from Gate 6, he shouldn't burn too much fuel to get into his usual position as a leader or on-pace runner. Number 13 is Timour, a cliche Euro dud. He got our attention with a win in a weak Curragh Cup in June last year before a poor run in the Irish St Leger and a pitiful 21st in the Melbourne Cup. This prep he's run 9th and 11th against a number of his Andrew Ramsden opponents. There is no reason to believe we'll see a sudden form reversal. Number 14 is Herman Hesse. Herman Hesse is not a regular winner, but his last start was probably his best run in Australia. He began his Australian racing career in 2021 after spending his 3-year-old year in the UK. He had some low-level wins over 1 mile and 6 furlong distance, very similar to the distance of Andrew Ramsden. In 2021, he won 2 races over 2,000 metres here in Australia. He won again in 2022 over 2,400 metres, but it was at benchmark 78 level. His next start, he stepped up to listed level in the 2,400 metre Colin Stephen and was a close 3rd while carrying just 54 kilograms. His last run of the 2022 spring campaign was a disappointing 9.5 lengths 7th in the benchmark 96 race that White Marlin won impressively. This prep he's had 3 runs, with the first 2 pretty pedestrian, but his last start saw him at listed level in the Mornington Cup, beating home a lot of his opposition, including Vow and Declare, Swords Drawn, Timour, but he does step up in weight by 4.5 kilograms. Number 15 is Third Realm. At this stage, it's looking like this guy may well be another Euro dud. Not that he came here with any great reputation. Back in 2021, in his 3-year-old season, he ran in the Derby, finishing 5th. Early in 2022, he won a listed race over 2,400 metres, but when he stepped up to the Group 1 Prix de Saint-Cloud, he finished more than 20 lengths back. Since being in Australia, he's had 2 runs. His first hit out in the Neville Selwood. He was taken to the lead and finished well back. Maybe it was their way of fitting him up to get him near the lead. His next run was on a heavy track in the Warrnambool Cup, where he raced to his regular pattern around midfield or worse than midfield, and put on a better performance, albeit on a heavy track. He finished 6 lengths 6. He'll be fitter, and this time he won't be on a heavy track. Watch the money. He has already come in starting from 100 to about 45 to 1 now, and that is a decent indicator. Timour is number 16. His last start was a failure in the Sydney Cup, despite getting in with just 50 kilograms. Prior, he had some people excited by a win in the Group 3 Melbourne Cup, but I think that was fake form, and I said it at the time, as it was a slow run race where he was up close to the leader, Sir Lucan. Once again, I'll state that his opposition in the Melbourne that day, Raging Bull and Sir Lucan, went on to finish 12th and 9th respectively in their next races. Timour carried 54 kilograms in the Melbourne. In the Andrew Ramsden, he'll carry 58.5. No chance. Number 17 is Lunar Flare. We all know what this mare is capable of. She won the 2500 metre Bart Cummings at this track in the lead up to last year's Melbourne Cup. She was then denied a start in the Cup by Racing Victoria's woke veterinary regime. Now she's back, and her last 2 starts over 2,000 metres have seen her denied clear running room in the Australian Cup and the recent Easter Cup. She wouldn't have won either of those races, even with a clear passage, but now we step up to 2,800 metres and hopefully a little luck in running. At 7 or 8 to 1, she is good value and may be able to pick off the 2 on-pace faves, White Marlin and Hezashocka. Number 18 is Patroness, the second of the mares. She won her last start after finishing well back in the Queen Elizabeth and the Australian Cup. And to be fair, she was held up behind traffic in the Australian Cup. She's going to drop in weight slightly. She is an Oaks winner back in April of 2022. That was on a heavy track, by the way. Patroness didn't race in the spring. She had 5 runs this prep, commencing in February. She went 1,400, 1,600, 2,000, 2,000, up to 2,100 metres. And with distance, her finishing position has progressively improved. Yes, her opposition in the recent start that she won have not shaken the world since, but she won that race by 2.75 lengths and was easing up. She's definitely a strong place chance. She's only 4. Maybe she will relish the 2,800 metres as well. She does have an awkward barrier, but she tends to race midfield or worse than midfield anyway. So that's not the worst disadvantage to her. And summing up, here's a look at a speed map as I go through my own selections. Rebel Racer or White Marlin will lead, and it's not in either of their interests for the race to be run at a pedestrian pace. For me, that sets it up for Hezashocka to be there within striking distance and to slug it out with the grey White Marlin down the straight and to prevail. Lunar Flare is probably going to have some of her fast finishing ability drained by a decent tempo, and so she will struggle to bridge that gap. I'm thinking 4th place is going to be either Vow and Declare, Patroness or Swords Drawn. By the way, there are 4 emergencies named for the race, but at the time of recording there have been no scratchings. In my opinion, none of those 4 runners could run a place, so I haven't done the form for them. In number order, they are, remembering that the Andrew Ramsden is limited to 18 horses. Number 19 is Alakahan, 20 Long Arm, 21 Kabosh and 22 Pesto. Don't forget, next week is the Yorkshire Cup, so plenty of the Ascot Gold Cup hopefuls are nommed for that race. We've got the likes of Broome, Hamish, Emily Dickinson, Trushan, Coltrane, Siskani. Probably not all of them big names are going to run. That's Friday night though, Australian time next week, the 19th of May. Check the odds.
Now it's easier than ever to have band.video on your iPhone. Simply go to band.video with your Safari browser. Then you click the share button at the bottom of the screen. When the menu comes up, you simply click Add to Home Screen. It will then ask you to name the app. I suggest band.video. You will now have band.video app on your home screen, despite the fact that Tim Cook tried to stop it. The globalists think you're lazy, but by taking a little bit of action, you can override them, have the app, and then tell others about it so they can get the app. So it's up to you whether you want to defy big tech and click the share buttons below on your email, on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, however you want. Be sure and share band.video.